Delighted to be here with you at this very important event. Now, as you've just heard, I'm a neuroscientist, and I would like to think that we are living in the era of the brain. We've developed new technologies that are allowing us to peer into the human brain as never before. We can see emotions arise. We can see ideas take shape. We can watch as we learn, remember, and forget. But also, we can use some of this new neuroscience knowledge about our own behavior to start to inspire the generation of new technologies, artificial intelligence systems that have been based on understanding how our own neural networks operate. And all of this, I believe, allows us to start to access our own intelligence that bit more effectively, and also helps us to tap in to the cognitive capacity or the brain power of those around us. I think we're living under a massive era of evolutionary transition, and our knowledge about our brains and behavior and our ability to develop these new intelligent systems is all part of this. And these are the topics that I want to explore with you over the next 25 minutes. And in order to do that, because I'm a scientist, I believe the best place to start is with an experiment or a demonstration. And so I'm delighted to ask Ina to join us on stage. Big round of applause, please, for Ina, who has just been wired up. She wasn't aware that this was going to be happening to her today. But what we're going to be doing is using some of these new technologies in order to peer into her brain and analyze her thoughts live on stage. So please keep your thoughts clean, Ina. Now, I'm just going to plug her in.
What did I sign up for?
So what we've got here is a basic EEG kit, which is going to measure the electrical activity in Ina's brain. Now, each one of us has this incredibly sophisticated computer or organic brain that lives on top of our heads. And this brain weighs about 1.3 kilograms, so it's about 2% of our total body mass. But it greedily, hungrily consumes about 20% of our daily energy quota. And the reason that it uses so much energy is because within our brain lives about 86 billion nerve cells. Now, to put that into context, that's about 14 times the number of people on this planet in terms of nerve cells in our brain. And each one of those nerve cells is connected to around 10,000 other nerve cells to create this really intricate, sophisticated circuit board. Now, why am I calling it a circuit board? Is because basically in order to process information from the outside world and to create our sense of reality, to perceive the world and then have an emotional reaction to it, we use the power of electricity, the pumping of sodium and potassium ions in and out of the cell membrane to create a speedy kind of signal of around 120 miles an hour that allows these electric signals to comprehend our world and then instruct us to interact with it. And what a wonderful German called Hans Berger developed about 101 years ago was the EEG machine, which allowed us to analyze that electrical activity zipping around the brain as we think and as we feel. And that's what we're going to look at right now. So beautiful. So what we've got here on the y-axis is potential difference in millivolts. So we're measuring the voltage of Ina's brain. And on the x-axis is time in milliseconds. Now I'm going to ask Ina if she could possibly, to test this system, stay as still as possible, and now furiously wriggle her eyebrows up and down. And we're seeing an instantaneous response as we're picking up the electrical signal of her motor cortex, instructing her muscles to move. Now I'm going to ask Ina to stay as still as possible, to close her eyes, and to meditate live on stage in front of all of you. And what we've got here at the top is in the red band, is the fastest speed of electrical oscillation across the brain. So that's where waves of electrical activity can go in quick succession, allowing the whole connectome, the whole brain, to send signals in really quick succession so that you can start to access information that's held across all the disparate regions in your brain. These gamma waves, as they're so called, these really fast frequency waves, allow you to think with your whole brain and integrate all of that intelligence that's stored within your brain. And counterintuitively, sitting still and meditating and reflecting can actually help to ramp up those gamma waves. Now, I have to say, Ina, it might be that because everybody is oh, there we go, we're getting a big increase there. But you might be feeling a little bit like you're being watched. So it's quite difficult to meditate in front of lots of people when that's happening. I'm now going to ask you to do something different. I'm going to hope to increase your so-called alpha waves, which are the blue waves. Now, these are the slowest speed of electrical oscillation in the awake brain. And these alpha waves are related to calm creativity. So I'm now going to ask you, Ina, to create something with this. And what we should see is an increase in alpha wave activity as Ina is thinking creatively. So Hans Berger has been analysing the electrical oscillations in individual brains for over 100 years. And we've learnt a lot about how our brains operate using this type of technology. But more recently, just in the last 10 years or so, scientists have been more interested in what happens when groups of brains start to work together. And we know that if we started to wire all of you up to one of these types of EEG machines, and to peer into your brain as you're watching a performance, for example, the dance performance that was occurring earlier on, then what you'll start to see is that the brain waves will start to synchronize or become in tune with each other. And this is something that we probably intuitively know. When you work together well with somebody, when you're starting to feel the same thing, you feel synchronized, you feel aligned with them, you feel attuned. And actually you can see that people's heart rates start to beat in synchronicity together. And their brain waves, their electrical activity in the brain actually starts to align as well, almost creating this super brain, a collection of human brains that are all beating and electrically transferring information in the same step. And we know from studies that when that happens, when we create those physiologically aligned super brains, actually we start to learn from each other more effectively. We start to allow ideas to hop from mind to mind so that we can create and innovate that much more effectively. And we also help to build consensus. So there's something about groups of brains coming together that allows us to start to unleash the full human brain potential when we work together in synchronicity. Now, knowing that, is there anything that we can do to help ourselves to synchronize with each other, to create this all-powerful human superbrain? Well, yes, there is. So, for example, if Ina and I were to look each other in the eye directly, we would start to become more aligned in terms of our brain electrical activity. Now then, if we were also all to sing together, for example, then we would be more likely to create that superbrain. So I'm going to ask if there is anybody in the audience today who has a birthday today. Due to probability, there probably is somebody who's got a birthday in the audience. Anybody? Anybody with a birthday? Maybe it's perhaps a little bit too... Oh, is there anybody who's got a birthday tomorrow? There must be somebody. Somebody is... There we go, there is somebody at the back there. Now, I'm going to invite everybody to hold hands with the person next to them. And I'm going to ask us all to create this wonderful superbrain. I'll hold hands with you, Ina. We're going to create a wonderful superbrain as we sing happy birthday to... What's your name, please? Huh? Oscar? Pascal. Pascal? Pascal. Okay, we're going to sing happy birthday to Pascal. All together now. I'm a terrible singer, I apologize. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Pascal. Happy birthday to you. And this is something that many different cultures across the globe have known, many civilizations, ancient civilizations, have known for many years that when groups of people get together, when they sing together, when they dance together, when they hold hands and look at each other in the eye, then actually that helps them to become more of that super brain that helps them to work together more effectively and have many more ideas so that they can problem solve much more effectively. And now neuroscience is starting to see what's happening in the brain as we do that and how these types of activities can amplify our very human intelligence. Huge thanks to Ina for her wonderful brainwaves there, and also to this beautiful butterfly.
It's a bird.
A bird. A beautiful bird that has been created. Huge thanks to Ina there. And I've got this for you, so. Okay. Now, we've been looking at what happens in groups of brains when they start to come together. But how does our individual consciousness also arise? So we were looking at Ina's brain there, and we were looking at how the electrical activity is whooshing across her brain as she was thinking and feeling live on stage in front of all of you. Now, we've also been able to start to analyse the human genome, our DNA that we've been given from our mum and from our dad when the sperm and the egg fused together to create our very unique embryo. And those 3.2 billion base pairs of nucleotides in our very individual DNA, our very unique blueprint for life, writes not only how our bodies are going to be put together, and codes for our height, our eye colour, or our hair colour, but it also codes for how our brains are going to be put together, how those 86 billion nerve cells in our brain are going to connect up and function and operate to create those electrical oscillations throughout our life. And we're starting to see how different DNA sequences that we've been predisposed to or given from our mum and dad create a predisposition in terms of our complex behaviours. So, for example, how intelligent we might be, how extrovert or introvert we might be, how long we might live, or how impulsive we might be, how resilient we might be in the face of mental ill health. All of these complex traits have a genetic, biological element to them in terms of the DNA that we've been given from our mum and our dad that shapes our brains and shapes the way that our brains create those electrical oscillations and interact with other people. But it's obviously not just our DNA, the genes that we've been given, that shape our perception of the world and go on to shape our destiny or life trajectory. Also, our experiences impact how we see the world. And there's a lovely example here. So we're all used to seeing hollow faces in the environment. But even so, when we see this hollow mask twirling round and round, when the shadow information shows us that the eyes and the nose are going backwards, we see another face popping out because we're used to seeing faces in our environment. So we ignore that shadow information that tells us that it's the face popping out backwards. And we just overlay that sense of seeing a face. Here's another example of how quickly, as a group of brains, your sense of reality is shaped by your shared experience. So I'm going to ask you all to take a listen to this. Pretty much gobbledygook, right? Now take a listen to this.
The camel was kept in a cage at the zoo. The camel was kept in a cage at the zoo.
Poor camel. Now we're going to revert to the original audio file and see if you can hear what they're saying. So forevermore now, as a group of people, if you ever hear that gobbledygook of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you will hear it as the camel was kept at the cage at the zoo. Because you've had that shared experience of having the similar cadence sentence, one after each other in quick succession. And so your brain has learnt how to filter that information and ignore any misinformation and just start to see it as the camel was kept to the cage at the zoo. So this is how quickly, as a group of brains, our reality can be shaped by shared experiences. But we also have our unique genetic elements that we've been handed down from our ancestors that also shape our reality as well. Now, scientists have been really interested in this idea that we each have a unique view of the world, and we each see the world in a different way based on our genes, but also based on our unique experiences as well as our shared experiences. And they've been really interested in the idea of what's the point in this? What's the point in each of us having this very expensive, metabolically demanding organ on the top of our heads that processes information in very different ways that can change based on our experiences and change our perception of the world based on our experience? What's the point in all of this? And what they've come up with is that actually we're going through a major evolutionary transition at the moment, where we're moving away from the individuality of our past to create more of this superbrain, where we're kind of almost compelled to create lots of technologies that allow us to work together more effectively, to share our views across the globe, and to start to share perspectives and see the world as a consensus. And there's been many, many scientific studies that have looked at how when groups of brains come together and they have that synchronicity in terms of their electrical activity, then each person, if it's working well, can start to see the world in a much more accurate way. So we each have all of our biases and errors in our information processing within our individual brain, because our brains have to take shortcuts, which is why we see the back end of a hollow or a face popping out rather than the back end of a hollow mask. But when groups of brains come together and freely talk about what's really happening in the world, then they can start to balance out those biases to create a much more accurate representation of the world so that they can then start to problem solve more effectively. And it's thought that we are undergoing this massive evolutionary transition to create more of this collective intelligence mind within our own species. And this is because we are not a sea squirt, which is an image here. So this beautiful, beautiful little amoeba-like creature floats around in the ocean currents. And it lives a wonderful life. It floats around in the ocean, and at some point in its life cycle, it will float past a rock, and it will decide to just implant itself on that rock. And at this point, the little sea squirt is feeling quite happy with itself. Now, it doesn't need anybody else because it's a hermaphrodite. It can have sex with itself and reproduce. It doesn't need anyone else. It doesn't need to move anywhere. It doesn't really need to think because the ocean currents will bring food in the waves, so it can just ingest that. And so do you know what the sea squirt does at this point? Because it's able to have sex with itself and it's able to eat everything that comes around in its environment. It decides to just ingest its nervous system. So it eats its own nervous system. It doesn't need it anymore. Now, I would say that we are the opposite of a sea squirt. We need our brains. We need other people's brains. We need to create that organic supercomputer, that organic supermind that is our collective species intelligence. Now, there's a really lovely study that I think helps to crystallize this idea that when we work together and when we pick up on the intelligence of people around us, then actually it amplifies our own decision making. And this study comes from, I think, quite an unlikely source. John Coates was a trader back in Wall Street in the day when everyone was trading on the busy trading floors. So he was selling his stocks and shares, and he was working during the period of the economic crash. And at one point, he took a step back and he said to himself, now, what is it about me that is so successful? That's something, what is it that's made me so rich? And that's nice, isn't it, for him to have that question? And so he decided to take that question, and he had like a bit of a gut hunch about what it could be, what the answer could be. And he decided to retrain in neuroscience at the Judge Business School at Cambridge University, which is where I met him. And he did this really interesting study around that time of the economic crash in 2007, 2008. And I'm going to ask you to all kind of take part in this study, really, I'm going to invite you to stand up if you feel comfortable doing so. So stand up, everybody. And I'm going to ask you to do 30 seconds of vigorous exercise. So something that you feel comfortable with in your body. I'm going to do some star jumps. I'm going to run up and down the stage. What I'm doing is getting my heart pumping, okay? So if we start now, okay? So just 30 seconds of vigorous exercise. We're getting our hearts pumping. Our brains use about 20% of our daily energy quota, which is quite a lot. And in order to be, say, metabolically active, they need quite a lot of oxygen. And the heart helps with this. It gets the oxygen whooshing around the body and the brain so that we can start to think and feel more effectively. Now this is wonderful, great. Especially after a little break, I find this kind of exercise is good. Everyone's looking quite happy as well. Oh, look, our brains are probably kind of synchronizing as we're exercising in step with each other. Oh, this is lovely. We're creating a wonderful super brain of happiness here. Good, okay. We've got endorphins going around, lovely. Well done, everyone. I'm a little bit out of breath. But I like that. Now I'm going to ask you, your heart should be beating quite heavily now, or quite hard. I'm going to ask you to just sit for 30 seconds and listen to that heart beating. Listen to the strength of it and count the beats. And what John Coates found in an admittedly small-scale study was that those traders who were better able to listen to their heartbeats, to listen to those signals within their bodies, it's called our embodied cognition, or our interoceptive ability. There's lots of intelligence that's stored in our bodies from the world around us, from the people around us, even the sweat that they might secrete. There's a chemical signature in there that can indicate to our brains that there might be a threat in the environment, for example. There's all this myriad of signals that we each give off, and perhaps we don't all store it within our incredibly intelligent brains, but actually a lot of information is stored within our bodies, particularly our heart and our gut. And that information from the outside world travels up via the vagus nerve to a part of the brain called the insula, which is involved in tapping into the collective intelligence of the people around us and the information that's held within our bodies from other people. And what John Coates found was that those traders that were better able to detect and listen to their heartbeat and listen to those signals that were being stored in the world around them so that they could think with collective intelligence and not just the information that's consciously stored in their brains, actually made better decisions. And they made greater profits during the period of economic downturn, during the period of economic crash. Now, this begs the question, should we all be doing star jumps for 30 seconds every day, maybe a few times a day, in order to tap into our intelligence? Perhaps if traders had been doing that, every trader had been doing that, in the lead up to the crash wouldn't have happened. I don't know. But I do spend a bit of time now trying to listen to my body and listen to that intelligence of the world around us. Now, really quickly, this is a lovely example from Professor Richard Roche. He's at Maynooth University in Ireland. And he's looking at how we can start to use those EEG patterns that we were measuring earlier with Eno to create a closed loop whereby one person's EEG patterns can actually impact how the next person feels. So they've created this 3-person closed loop where the electrical activity of one brain is affecting the electrical activity of the person next to them. And we know that this actually happens naturally within our own brains anyway, without even using these EEG hats. So, for example, if your neighbour is happy, and you get on with your neighbour and you talk to them fairly regularly, that actually increases the chance that you'll be happy. If your best friend or your sister or brother lives locally to you and they have a change in mood, it's likely that your mood will be affected by how they're seeing the world as well. Now, there's a lovely exception to this, where we know that if your partner that you live with is feeling a little bit volatile and they're either feeling really happy or really sad, then we somehow seem to have this immunity so that we don't actually pick up on and get swayed by how they feel, which is lovely and very interesting. There's also moral values as well that can be contagiously spread from person to person as we operate in a close group. We've also started to use this information about how our own neural networks, our own human intelligence works, to create or to inspire the generation of artificial intelligence systems. And I want to talk about 2 examples, recent examples, that I think show how we can start to use this AI in a really positive way. Now, one of them was from the beginning of this decade. In 2020, there was a group of scientists at MIT in America, and they were very worried about antibiotic resistance and when the next pandemic, for example, might occur, and what we were going to do as a human species about this problem. And so what they decided to do was use AI systems to trawl through a database of around 2,000 different molecules that had been FDA approved as having some antimicrobial action. And this included natural compounds as well. And once the AI had gone through that information, it was then let loose on a library of over 60,000 different molecules that had been approved by the FDA for human consumption. And what the AI found was one molecule, which scientists then called halcylin, in a nod to the Space Odyssey computer HAL in it. And this one molecule was found to be superior as an antibiotic with no known resistance to any known bacterial agents out there. Now, this is the really fascinating thing. Humans didn't understand how this new antimicrobial agent actually worked. They had no idea. In fact, it had a completely novel signature, a mode of operation. And humans had to reverse engineer it to try and understand exactly how it worked. So AI was able to trawl through this database and create a new reality and shape our perception of how antibiotics could actually work. We learnt from the AI. Similarly, I've got a colleague at Cambridge University, Tim Gilliams. Now, he used to work in the chemistry department. He set up this company called Helix, and he's using AI systems to trawl through databases to create new compounds that can help treat rare diseases. And he's, again, had huge success with that. And he's been able to bring together many people with the AI in order to create new compounds that can actually save lives. So there's no doubt that AI can be used in a positive way. But there was a lovely study that was published in 2025 that was looking at how we as humans trust AI and how much safety we might have in them. And what they found is that those countries that are developed, if you like, will have less trust in AI, more concerns over privacy, and are less likely to use it. And it seems as though we think of AI as having some potential, but it's not the panacea to all of our problems. And I'd like to think that perhaps in this age where we're starting to learn more about our own human behavior our very human intelligence and our collective intelligence, actually we start to think and start to cherish those very human skills that we have of being able to connect with each other and create that superbrain so that we can problem solve and innovate more effectively into the future, rather than thinking that we can just let AI do all of the hard work for us. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you.